All right, welcome back to SportsLine, everybody. After a very eventful U.S. Open Golf Championships in Oakmont, PA this past weekend, Dustin Johnson finally gets over the hump and wins his first major, but it was not without controversy. So, a topic people are still talking about a few days afterwards. We bring in our good buddy Virgil Herring, PGA teaching pro. Of course, you see his great golf tips every Sunday night on the Electric Power Company Sunday Sports Central. Virgil, great to have you on, my man. How's your summer going so far?
So far, so great, Johnny. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. All right, listen, I was on vacation this past weekend. I was able to get a peek and to watch the final round of the U.S. Open. For those that may have not have heard, or for those who are still confused by what the USGA did or tried to do or didn't do on Sunday, break it down for us. What was the deal involving Dustin Johnson?
Well, on the fifth hole, he was basically going through the motions of getting ready to hit a putt. He was standing beside the ball, not addressing it, making a couple practice strokes, kind of get a feel for what he needed to make the stroke. And as he began to move toward the ball moved. So he immediately, as all PGA professionals do, they recognize we govern ourselves. So he called a rules official and said, "My ball moved." And so he didn't address it because he didn't put the putter behind the ball. So they agreed that he didn't do anything to move the ball. It was due to the fact that the greens are so fast and have so much slope that it just moved a little bit. So he didn't. They deemed him not guilty of any infraction. Mm-hmm. So then he didn't have to remark his ball. He putted it from there, and he didn't think anything of it. 7 holes later, on the 12th hole, a USGA official walked up to him and said that after reviewing it, we may have to penalize you, which is really terrible on so many different accounts for. Yeah,
Virgil, that's the part I don't get. We may have to either penalize them or you don't, right? Or am I wrong here?
Well, I mean, what happened is that you would think that they would choose not to do anything about it until after the round, because I mean, I'm telling you right now that if this was Tiger Woods and he backs off his putt on 5 in Tiger's prime, and then they walk up to him on 12 and say we might have to change our mind, Stevie would have had to restrain Tiger from the official, because sure, that's so lack of professional, in my opinion, and my lack of professionalism, because they already deemed it, the rules official already deemed it okay. So at that particular point, them doing anything to alter his mental state is almost like a hindrance. Now,
right. I mean, and I think I know where you're going with this, Virg. Just the fact that, okay, I was already told I'm in the clear, and now 7 holes later, as I'm fighting for my life, trying to win, my first major championship, trying to win the U.S. Open, you just waltz up to me and say, hey, we may have to penalize you a stroke? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that was really poor. And I know that the USGA has come out a day later and admitted that they made a mistake. But nevertheless, this probably couldn't have been handled any better by any professional than Dustin Johnson. And what I'm trying to get people to understand is that for all the things that Dustin Johnson is weak at, sometimes he might not be known as the smartest player, or he doesn't care too much. I think in this particular situation, there's no doubt about it that he was put in this situation because he could handle it. He's the person that definitely was kind of like, well, I can't do anything about it. So he just kept playing. He didn't let it affect him. He actually played unbelievable going in. And I really think that it would have bothered Tiger in his prime. It would have bothered Rory. It would definitely bother Jordan Spieth. He wears his emotions on his sleeve.
Right.
And you could even tell that by the text messages or the tweets that Jordan's put out, of how offended he was by it.
Oh, yeah.
That, I mean, it didn't even happen to him, and look how he reacted. If it had happened to him, this would have been way worse, because Jordan Spieth's the American hero right now. Dustin Johnson takes it home, doesn't really make a big deal out of it, and kudos to him for kind of just downplaying it. But it was a major scar, a major black eye for the USGA in a situation where the USGA and the PGA of America and the R&A, we can't afford to be doing things to make the game more difficult or less likely to enjoy. And they did a terrible job at promoting the game right there.
Virgil Herring is our guest, PGA teaching pro. You see him every Sunday night during the summer on the Electric Power Company Sunday Sports Central. You also see him on Golf Channel, golf analyst as well as a teaching professional. Virgil, you mentioned Dustin Johnson's troubles in the past. I remember last year at the U.S. Open, he had his troubles, had a shot to win late and kind of choked it away. What did he do differently this time around that he hasn't done in the past that helped him win his first major?
You know what I think? I don't really think that he did anything differently. Oakmont is a golf course in which nobody can putt so good that they can run away with it because the greens are so severe, so fast, and so sloped, okay? So generally speaking, the person who wins an Open Championship at Oakmont is the person who drove it better than everybody else and hit the most greens regulation, which Dustin Johnson did. Nobody drove it better than Dustin Johnson. He drove it 21 yards longer than the average for the week.
Did he have one drive where it was like 378 yards or something like that?
Yeah, how you doing? 378, yeah. You know, that's just unbelievable. And he's, by all accounts, the greatest driver of the golf ball on tour. And he proved it. He could do it under pressure, which has been somewhat of a problem for him. He just drove it beautifully. He hit more greens. And then when par is a good score, Dustin Johnson can two-putt anything. He just doesn't make enough putts under the gun for birdie when the tournament winner is 18, 20 under par. Well, in this particular situation, he drove the ball beautifully, hit more greens regulation, and made enough birdies. And he ended up winning by 3. He could have won by more if he had putted better because, my goodness, he missed 14 putts inside of 10 feet for the week. I mean, it could have been a blowout, like Tiger-esque blowout, if he had putted great, but he didn't need to putt great. He just needed to putt good, and that's what he did, and that's why he's our 2016 U.S. Open champion.
Virgil, you mentioned Rory McIlroy. What has gone wrong with his game? It seems like ever since he had that injury playing soccer a year ago, he has not been the same player.
That's a great question. You know, he still drives the golf ball second to only Dustin Johnson. Some would argue that he drives it better, certainly under the gun. But when it all comes right down to it, his short game is, for a tour player, not for the average golfer, for a tour player, is C+ to B-, and his putting is C. And unfortunately, as anybody who plays golf, 66% of the game occurs with a wedge and a putter in your hand. So there's only so much that Rory can do with his other 12 clubs in his bag. So when he only chips it average for him and putts it average for him, it's just not enough. So when he's won his major championships, he's putted great. And when he won the Open Championship in the British Open 2 years ago, he chipped and putted great. So the short game kicked in. Rory McIlroy is no different of a player. It's just that when he gets hot, it's only because his short game and his putting gets hot because he always hits it better than everybody else. He is definitely one of the 3 greatest ball strikers on the tour, and that never changes. It's just a question of how many putts he makes.
About 20 seconds with Virgil Herring. Give me your early thoughts, Virgil, on the Open Championship. Who do you think is the early favorite?
Well, it's hard to argue that it won't be coming out of the Big Four. You know, I think Dustin Johnson put himself right in there because he has the most talent than anybody, but he's never proven to be able to pull it off. Now he's got the monkey off his back. Look out for Dustin Johnson, but you have to look at Jordan Spieth, Rory, and Jason Day because those 4 guys are heads and tails above the rest, and I don't expect that to change. Those are the 4 names that are always going to lead the list.
Virgil, we love having you on. Thanks so much for being on with us, and we look forward to the Open Championship. We'll have you on again.
Thank you very much, buddy. Have a great day, John.
All right. That is the great Virgil Herring schooling us on some golf. We'll come back and wrap up the show right after this.